In the quiet dawn of a Minnesota morning, where mist clings to towering pines and gravel crunches beneath tires, Michael Parker's heart races as he pulls into the wildcat sanctuary. 5 long years had passed since Michael Parker last saw Luna, once a frightened bobcat kitten rescued from a suburban nightmare, is now a magnificent adult. For 8 months, he had carefully nursed Luna back to health, forging a connection he thought unbreakable. But circumstances had forced him to send her away, shattering his promise to visit. Yet he never stopped thinking about her. Now, after half a decade of silence, filled only with emailed updates and photos, he was finally here. Would the magnificent adult bobcat waiting inside even remember the man who saved her life? Or see him as just another stranger? This is a story of impossible odds, the enduring power of connection across species, and a reunion 5 years in the making that would challenge everything known about the heart of a wild animal. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall pines, casting dappled shadows across the gravel path leading to the wildcat sanctuary. Michael Parker checked his watch. 7:15 a.m., still 45 minutes before the sanctuary officially opened to visitors. He pulled his weathered green pickup into the empty parking lot, the tires crunching on the gravel surface. His heart raced in his chest, a mixture of anticipation and dread. 5 years. 5 long years since he'd seen Luna, and now, at age 38, he wondered if she would even remember him. The sanctuary, nestled among the rolling hills of northern Minnesota, was a refuge for rescued wild cats who could no longer survive in their natural habitats. The morning air felt crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and the distant sounds of awakening wildlife. Michael took a deep breath, steadying himself before stepping out of his truck. "You made it," a voice called out. Sarah Miller, the sanctuary's director, approached with a warm smile. She was a tall woman in her early 50s with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, dressed in khaki pants and a faded blue sanctuary polo shirt. "I wasn't sure if you'd change your mind at the last minute." "I've been trying to get here for 5 years," Michael replied, extending his hand. "Nothing could keep me away today." Sarah shook his hand firmly. "We've heard so much about you from Luna's transfer papers. The man who saved her life." Michael felt a lump form in his throat. "I just did what anyone would do." "Not everyone would dedicate 8 months of their life to raising a bobcat kitten," Sarah said. "Luna's quite special around here. Come on, I'll show you to her enclosure." As they walked through the sanctuary, Michael reflected on the journey that had brought him here. It had been a chilly October morning in the Colorado Rockies when Michael received the call. As a licensed wildlife rehabilitator with over a decade of experience, he often got calls about injured or orphaned animals, but this one was different. A family in Boulder had purchased what they thought was an exotic domestic cat from an unscrupulous breeder, only to realize 3 months later that their increasingly aggressive pet was actually a bobcat kitten. When Michael arrived at the suburban home, he found Luna, though she wasn't called that yet, cowering in a dog crate, severely underweight and visibly terrified. The family had been feeding her inappropriate food and had no idea how to care for a wild animal. When she started showing natural predatory behaviors, they became frightened of her. "We just want it gone," the husband had said, avoiding Michael's gaze. "Can you take it somewhere?" Michael had carefully loaded the crate into his truck, his heart breaking for the tiny creature inside. At his small wildlife rehabilitation center in the foothills outside Denver, he'd slowly coaxed the kitten out of her shell. He named her Luna for the perfect crescent moon-shaped marking on her right ear. Those first few weeks had been a delicate balance. Luna needed human care to survive, but Michael knew she should never be fully domesticated. He kept human contact minimal, using feeding gloves and limiting direct interaction. But Luna was young, barely 4 months old, and had imprinted on humans during her critical development period. Despite his best efforts, she formed an attachment to him. "Hey there, little wildcat," he would whisper as he prepared her meals of raw meat, vitamin supplements, and occasional live prey to help develop her hunting instincts. "You're going to be strong someday." As weeks turned into months, Luna grew stronger. Her coat, once dull and patchy, became glossy and full. She gained weight, her muscles developed, and her natural bobcat behaviors emerged more fully. Michael constructed an outdoor enclosure behind his small cabin, giving her space to climb, explore, and practice hunting skills. But as Luna approached her first birthday, Michael faced a difficult reality. Despite his best rehabilitation efforts, Luna would never be a candidate for release into the wild. Her early imprinting on humans and lack of a mother to teach her survival skills meant she would always be dependent on human care in some capacity. "It's not fair to keep her here," he told his colleague Sarah Thompson, a veterinarian who specialized in wildlife. "My setup is temporary at best. She needs more space, proper facilities, and the company of other bobcats." Sarah agreed, helping him research sanctuaries that could provide Luna with the best possible life. They found the Wildcat Sanctuary in Minnesota, renowned for its ethical treatment of animals and spacious natural enclosures. The sanctuary agreed to take Luna, understanding her unique circumstances. The day Michael loaded Luna's transport crate into the sanctuary's vehicle was one of the hardest of his life. She had looked up at him with those intelligent amber eyes, and he had felt like he was betraying her trust. "I'm sorry, Luna," he had whispered. "This is what's best for you, even if you don't understand." He had planned to visit her within a few months, once she had settled into her new home. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Michael's wildlife rehabilitation work was grant-funded and seasonal. Just 2 weeks after Luna's departure, he received devastating news. His funding had been cut. At the same time, his father in Arizona suffered a severe stroke. With bills mounting and family responsibilities pressing, Michael had no choice but to pack up his small Colorado operation and move to Arizona to care for his father. Years passed. Michael's father recovered slowly but never regained full independence, requiring Michael's assistance. Michael found work with the Arizona Game and Fish Department, but the salary barely covered their living expenses. Each year, he promised himself he would save enough to make the trip to Minnesota. But each year, some new expense arose. Medical bills, car repairs, home maintenance in the punishing desert heat. He kept in touch with the sanctuary through emails and occasional phone calls, receiving updates and photos of Luna. She had grown into a magnificent adult bobcat, they told him, healthy and as well-adjusted as could be expected for her unique background. She shared a spacious enclosure with another bobcat who had also been rescued from an inappropriate pet situation. The two weren't bonded but coexisted peacefully, typical of the solitary nature of their species. Then, last winter, Michael's father passed away peacefully in his sleep. After the funeral and settling the estate, which left Michael with unexpected inheritance, he finally had both the financial means and the freedom to make the journey he had been postponing for 5 years. "Here we are," Sarah said, interrupting Michael's memories as they approached a large enclosure set back from the main path. "This is Luna's home." The enclosure was impressive, at least half an acre of natural Minnesota landscape enclosed by high fencing. It contained several tall structures for climbing, natural rock formations, dense vegetation areas, and a small stream running through one corner. Michael could see a covered den area in the back, providing shelter from the elements. "Where is she?" he asked, scanning the space. "Probably in her favorite spot," Sarah said, pointing to a wooden platform elevated about 10 feet off the ground. "She likes to watch the sanctuary wake up from there." And there she was. Luna was no longer the frightened kitten Michael had rescued, nor even the adolescent bobcat he had rehabilitated. She was now a magnificent adult, her muscular body weighing around 25 pounds, her coat a beautiful mixture of brown, tan, and white with the distinctive black spots and ear tufts of her species. Even from a distance, Michael could see the crescent moon marking on her right ear that had inspired her name. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's one of our healthiest residents," Sarah replied proudly, "and one of the calmest around our staff, which we attribute to your early socialization work. You did an excellent job of finding that balance. She's not tame, but she's comfortable with humans at an appropriate distance." Michael nodded, unable to speak as emotion welled up inside him. Luna hadn't noticed them yet, her attention focused on a bird flitting between trees beyond her enclosure. "Now," Sarah said, her tone becoming more serious, "I want to set realistic expectations. While Luna is comfortable with our staff, she may not remember you specifically. It's been 5 years, which is a significant portion of her life. Bobcats in captivity can live 20 to 25 years, but they don't necessarily form the same long-term recognition bonds that some other species do." "I understand," Michael said, trying to prepare himself for disappointment. "I'll be happy just to see her, even if she doesn't remember me." Sarah studied him for a moment. "Normally, we don't allow visitors inside the enclosures, but given your history with Luna and your professional background, I'm making an exception. Would you like to go in?" Michael's heart leapt. "Yes, absolutely." "Follow all my instructions," Sarah said firmly. "Luna may be accustomed to humans, but she's still a wild animal with instincts and strength to match. I'll be with you the entire time." Michael nodded, listening carefully as Sarah explained the protocols. They would enter slowly. No sudden movements. No direct eye contact initially. They would sit quietly on a bench inside the enclosure and allow Luna to approach or not at her discretion. If she showed any signs of stress or aggression, they would leave immediately. With these rules established, Sarah unlocked the first gate of the double entry system. They stepped into the small holding area between the two gates, closed the first gate securely behind them, then prepared to open the second gate into Luna's domain. "Ready?" Sarah asked. Michael took a deep breath. "Ready." The second gate swung open, and they stepped into the enclosure. The sounds and smells were immediately different, more intense, more alive. This was Luna's territory, and they were visitors here. Sarah led Michael to a wooden bench positioned about 20 feet from the entrance, and they sat down quietly. Luna had noticed their entry. Her head swiveled toward them, ears erect and alert. She watched them intently from her elevated platform, her body perfectly still except for the slight twitch of her tail tip. "She's assessing us," Sarah whispered. "This is normal." Michael nodded, keeping his movements minimal. His heart was pounding so loudly he was sure Luna could hear it from her perch. He wondered what was going through her mind. Did she see them as intruders? Potential threats? Or just curious anomalies in her daily routine? For several minutes, they sat in complete silence. Luna continued to observe them, occasionally shifting her position slightly, but maintaining her elevated vantage point. Michael began to worry that she might stay there for the duration of their visit, keeping a safe distance. Then, something changed. Luna's posture shifted subtly. Her ears perked forward more intently, and she tilted her head slightly as if trying to catch a scent on the breeze. She rose to her feet in one fluid motion, stretching her muscular body before beginning to descend the series of platforms that led to the ground. "She's coming down," Sarah whispered, a note of surprise in her voice. "That's unusual for a new visitor." Michael held his breath as Luna reached the ground and began moving toward them with the characteristic gait of a bobcat. Graceful, yet powerful, each step deliberate. She stopped about 15 feet away, sitting on her haunches and regarding them with those intelligent amber eyes. "This is a good sign," Sarah said quietly. "She's curious but cautious. Perfectly appropriate behavior." Michael nodded, unable to speak. Luna was even more beautiful up close. Her fur caught the morning sunlight, highlighting the intricate pattern of her coat. The white fur of her underside contrasted sharply with the dark spots and stripes that adorned her body. And there, on her right ear, was the crescent moon marking, exactly as he remembered it. "Hello, Luna," he finally managed to say, keeping his voice soft and even. At the sound of his voice, Luna's ears twitched. She stared at him more intently, her head tilting slightly to one side. Something flickered in those amber eyes. Recognition? Interest? Michael couldn't be sure. "She's responding to your voice," Sarah observed. "That's interesting." Encouraged, Michael spoke again. "Do you remember me, Wildcat? It's been a long time." Luna stood up, her tail swishing slowly behind her. She took a few steps closer, then stopped again, now about 10 feet away. Michael could see her nostrils flaring as she took in their scents. "This is extraordinary," Sarah whispered. "She rarely approaches new people this closely." Michael's throat felt tight with emotion. Even if Luna didn't fully remember him, she was showing unusual interest. That alone was more than he had dared to hope for. Then, he did something he hadn't planned. Something that came from a place of memory deep within him. When Luna had been younger, during their rehabilitation days, he had developed a soft clicking sound he would make with his tongue against the roof of his mouth. A gentle communication signal he used when approaching her enclosure with food or when he needed to check on her. Without thinking, he made the sound now. Click, click, click. Luna's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Her entire body tensed, her eyes widened, and she stared directly at Michael with an intensity that took his breath away. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, with a fluid grace that belied her power, Luna began walking directly toward him. "Stay very still," Sarah cautioned, a new note of concern in her voice. "This is unusual behavior." But Michael wasn't afraid. Something told him, some deep intuition born from the months they had spent together, that Luna remembered. Against all odds, against the passage of 5 years and the natural limitations of bobcat cognition, some part of her recognized him. Luna approached to within 5 feet of the bench, closer than Sarah had ever seen her come to a visitor. She sat down, her amber eyes never leaving Michael's face. Then she did something that made Sarah gasp. Luna made a sound, a soft, chirping vocalization that bobcats rarely make in captivity. reserved for mothers communicating with their kittens, or occasionally, for greeting members of their small social groups in the wild. "I've never heard her make that sound before," Sarah whispered, awe evident in her voice. Michael felt tears forming in his eyes. Slowly, very slowly, he extended his hand, palm down, fingers relaxed, not reaching toward Luna, but offering his scent more distinctly. Luna stretched her neck forward, her nostrils flaring as she took in his scent more directly. Then, in a movement that seemed to defy all sanctuary expectations, she took the final steps forward and gently bumped her head against Michael's extended hand. Sarah was speechless, watching with professional amazement as Luna, a wild bobcat who had lived at the sanctuary for 5 years, voluntarily initiated physical contact with a visitor. "Hello, old friend," Michael whispered, tears now flowing freely down his cheeks. With exquisite care, he gently scratched behind Luna's ears, a spot he had known she enjoyed during their rehabilitation days. Luna closed her eyes briefly, leaning slightly into his touch. She made the chirping sound again, a vocalization that seemed to bridge the 5-year gap between them. For the next 20 minutes, Luna remained near them, sometimes sitting quietly, sometimes moving around the bench, but always returning to Michael. She allowed him to stroke her head and neck gently, never showing any signs of stress or aggression. It was as if they were reconnecting in a language that transcended human understanding. A bond formed in those critical months of Luna's development that had somehow endured through the years of separation. "I've worked with wildcats for 20 years, Sarah finally said, her voice filled with wonder. "I've never seen anything like this. She remembers you, Michael. There's no other explanation." Michael could barely speak through his emotions. "I never stopped thinking about her. Not for a single day." Eventually, it was time to leave. Luna had begun showing signs of overstimulation, a natural response even to positive interactions for a wild animal. Michael understood the importance of respecting her needs and boundaries. "Thank you for this," he said to Sarah as they prepared to exit the enclosure. "It means more than I can express." "You're welcome to visit again," Sarah replied. "In fact, I'd like to document this bond. It could provide valuable insights for our work with other rescued wildcats." Michael looked back at Luna, who had retreated to a comfortable distance but was still watching him intently. "I'd like that very much. I won't let another 5 years pass." As they closed the gate behind them, Michael felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. The weight of guilt and regret he had carried for 5 years, the feeling that he had abandoned Luna, began to lift. She had not just survived, but thrived at the sanctuary. And against all odds, she had remembered him. Over the next year, Michael made regular visits to the sanctuary. He worked with Sarah and the sanctuary staff to document Luna's unusual level of recognition and social behavior. These observations contributed to the sanctuary's understanding of bobcat cognition and the impact of early imprinting. With his inheritance and his background in wildlife rehabilitation, Michael eventually relocated to Minnesota, taking a position with a local wildlife management agency. The move allowed him to visit Luna regularly and to volunteer at the sanctuary, sharing his expertise with their rehabilitation programs. Luna remained a wild animal, independent, driven by instinct, and requiring respectful boundaries. But her unusual bond with Michael continued to defy conventional understanding of bobcat behavior. In her own way, on her own terms, she greeted him each time he visited, sometimes with that same soft chirping sound, sometimes with a gentle head bump against his hand. Their story spread through wildlife rehabilitation circles, a testament to the complex bonds that can form between humans and wild animals, and the responsibility that comes with those connections. Luna became something of an ambassador at the sanctuary, helping educate visitors about the importance of keeping wildlife wild and the special considerations required for animals that have been imprinted on humans. On cool Minnesota mornings, Michael would sometimes sit quietly in Luna's enclosure, watching as she went about her bobcat business, climbing, exploring, hunting enrichment toys provided by the sanctuary staff. And occasionally, she would pause in her wild pursuits to acknowledge his presence with a glance or a soft sound, a reminder of the connection they shared. It wasn't the life Michael had envisioned when he first rescued a frightened bobcat kitten from a suburban home in Colorado. It was, in many ways, something better. A relationship built on respect for Luna's wild nature and the unique circumstances that had brought them together. A reminder that sometimes, the deepest bonds are formed not by trying to tame the wild, but by honoring it. And on those special days when Luna chose to approach him, to share a moment of connection before returning to her wild ways, Michael felt a profound gratitude for the privilege of being remembered by a creature who, by all conventional wisdom, should have forgotten him long ago.